call the meeting to order. May we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Januso? Mrs. Rogers?
Here.
Mrs. Barnes?
Here.
Mrs. Barney? Mr. Roach?
Here. Hey, can we have a motion to approve the September 20th meeting minutes?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Januso?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Mrs. Barney?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
Okay, the next item is, this says a motion, but we really don't need a motion to do this. All I'm going to do is establish a subcommittee for preparation of the 2023 budget. And I myself was going to be on that committee, and I'm going to have Erin on that committee as well. She's agreed to do that. So in December, we'll sometime, Mike, when you're ready with the numbers, you can put together and set up a meeting date.
Okay. And what I'll do is I'll start working on it now with Shanna. We'll get everything together, and then we can forward that information on to everyone and go from there.
Okay, the next item is a motion to approve the signing easement encroachment agreement for the deck at 713 Mission Hills Drive. You want to?
What we had there was, we had a dye test come through for that. We went out to do the dye test, and they had to fail the dye test due to the fact that the deck was over top of the sanitary sewer easement. So we went out and did some measurements, requested the original building permit from the township, as well as documentation from the homeowners association. What was drawn up was shown that it was right outside of the sanitary sewer easement, but they actually built half of the deck 6 foot into the easement on one side and 2 foot into the other side of the easement. So in discussion with Walt, we have done this in the past. The homeowners are well aware that that if something would happen, we do not have to put the deck back. They are willing to sign the encroachment agreement. They went ahead and did the survey. Everything's drawn up. I recommend approval of the easement.
Okay. Can we have a motion to approve the easement encroachment agreement?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Januso?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Barney?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Excuse me for 1 second, Dawn and Mike, if I may. The intent would be to record that document
Yes.
in the recorder's office.
Yes.
So we can discuss if you need, but just that would be the case. Okay, so it runs with the land.
Okay, the next item is a motion to approve a refund credit for T&R Properties for the water leak at Fairways and South Point. Mike, I'll let you give us the background on that.
Basically, we had a water leak. They had requested a refund for a water leak that occurred over at Fairway Landings, or the Fairway at South Point. And there was some discussion about that last month. It started in May of 2022 into June and July. So they had requested some sort of relief from the water bills that they had paid and the sewage bills. At the end of the day, we did some research in it, and I sent everybody a memo out. There were 5 options that were presented. The first option is that you can do nothing, give no credit whatsoever. The second one was match the water company credit. The water company gave back 676,000 gallons, which is approximately $5,400, so we could match that. The third option was we could go ahead and, based on some calculations, go back and look at 2021, what was used over their highest usage for the year, multiply that by 3 months, and then deduct that from what they had used during the leak period, and give them a credit in that amount. The next option would be to go ahead and give them 50% of what their usage was. I think it was 4,500,000 gallons roughly, so give them 50% because we really couldn't tell for sure if water did or didn't get in there. Plus, they did have usage, and there was no way to calculate what they used because of all the excess usage. And then your last option was to give them a refund for the entire amount of what was there. So Walt and I discussed this in length, and based upon what we saw there, what would be fair and equitable is the 50% refund is what we had talked about and recommended. I sent everyone a memo, and again, it's at the board's pleasure what they, would decide, but that is what we looked at, and that's what we recommended.
You have that dollar amount?
Yes, the dollar amount would be $19,205.75, and would be 50% based on 4,519 million gallon used in the 3-month period question. The only other thing that would need to be decided, since they have already paid the sewage bills, is which way we would want to apply the credit. You could either apply the credit to their account or send them a refund check in that amount. So that would be the only other question.
They paid the full amount already, the 45,
They paid the full amount, they paid those bills as they came in.
as they came in,
Yep.
okay? And between you and Walt, 50% is what you and him decided as to what they should pay, 50% of the 4,500,000?
Because there was no way we could tell for sure how much went into the system. There was no good way to do that usage because of all that excess. And the water company, what they gave them back is nowhere near, the
Well,
excess that they
the
possibly
water was
used.
actually used. I mean, the water actually went through it. But wasn't those pictures that I looked at, and a few other people looked at, I felt as though that there probably wasn't even the 3 million.
Well,
Or rather, the comes up with 1,134,000 for 3 months. Who's to say that $1,134,000 gallons, went through the,
But that's the thing, it's hard to say for sure because we can't say where that pipe was at or a standpipe. We can't say if it didn't leak into the system, where the vent stack is and the sewer line is in that ditch line. That's the reason. If there was distinct evidence that we can see, it'd be a different story, but we couldn't say definitively one way or the other if it did or didn't get in the system.
What it amounts to is trying to come up with something that we think is fair and equitable. I mean, we could give them nothing.
oh, I agree
but-
with you, but
but-
I thought number 3 was the most fairest way to do it. You took the highest usage
Well-
for the whole year.
I mean, the credit that Pennsylvania American Water gave them was just a complimentary credit. I mean,
Right, because they used the water run. I know I had a water leak. I know what American Water did for me. Okay, I know that, but I didn't have storage, okay? So, I'm just looking from the standpoint that if this was me as an individual, that I think it's just about as fair as you can possibly be as far as taking the 3 highest months for the previous year, 2021, and basing it on the $8.50 per gallon, or per 1,000 gallons. That's just my sentiment.
well, I don't know. I look at it
It's the
that if
rest
we
of
give
the
them
board
back,
what they want to do.
if we give them back half of it, to me, that seems to be fair too, so.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
It's, it
It's the
depends on what-
it's the board's decision,
Yeah,
period.
right.
I'm just one voice here. That's how I feel.
Okay. My tendency would be to go with Mike and Walter's recommendation.
You making a motion to that?
I guess I can make a motion, huh?
Or you can ask another
Or I
board
can
member
ask
to
a
make
board
that
member to
motion.
do it.
I think that we've had the people who know and understand the system better than I do, better than probably most of us do, have made a recommendation in 5 out of 5 options. So I will make the motion to approve and I recommend refund to TNR Properties for the water leak at Fairview, or Fairway at South Point, and in the amount of $19,205.75.
I second that.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Januso,
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers,
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes,
Aye.
Mrs. Barney,
No,
Mr. Roach.
Aye.
Okay. The engineers report, Lawrence project update.
Yes, good evening.
Yes, good evening. Let's going to go over the bid tab first. We did open bids on the plant, the rebid, and we saved around $5 million on the rebid. First bid came in at $17,600,000. The rebid came in at $12,673,000. Mealy was the low bidder again. We did get a second bidder, DeMarco, and they were $14,836,851. We had 8 people pick up. Kind of the same problem we had before with the bidding of the project. A couple people called, were very interested in it, but their bonding limit, they were at it. They couldn't bid. A job was over $10 million, and so they had bonding issues. We had another one that had called Larry early on in the rebid process, said they were very interested. They got a $58 million project in Du Bois 2 weeks before, so then they called and said they were out, even though they had picked up. So some of those scenarios, but in the end, because we did get a second bidder, they were aggressively calling, had a lot of questions. They do a fair amount of plant work, so we did get quite a bit of reduction. We did make changes to the plans, though. We gave them an alternative foundation system, and that helped a lot. Excavation isn't quite as much.
Did they bid on the alternate foundation?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, Ram Aggregate Piers is,
So our money we spent on the redesign was well spent.
Yes, it was, yeah.
well worth it. So, and with that, now we got 2 good bids. We still are over budget by around $4 million. We ran the analysis to show what that does to rates, and Larry's going to go through those, and then we'll go through the process with Penvest to ask for the increase, timing on those things, and then this evening we cannot take action on the bids, but we do need action on letters and a resolution to go to Penvest for a letter of no prejudice, and then to ask for the increase of $4 million.
Can you explain that to?
Yeah, the letter of no prejudice, they want that to, so that we can then award the bids. You have to have that from Penvest, or the funding agency, to give you the authorization that you can start to take action on bids, and they won't hold that against you. If you don't get that, and you would award these bids this evening, then they could not fund the project at that point. So you're not allowed to take action till they say it's okay or you're within budget. So
Kevin, that also then gives them, they will increase the amount of money they give us in the Penvest loan?
that gives us the ability to request it, but yet still award these bids and move forward. And then in the January meeting, they'll take action
But
on
that
the
should not
increase.
be a problem, correct?
They've been doing it throughout because of everybody's prices went up. This is a standard thing right now. Even this letter of no prejudice used to be difficult to get. When we talk to Penvest, they're issuing them all the time because getting material ordered so that it come in next year is the normal.
So approximately how much are we going to be asking for an increase in the Penvest loan?
We're recommending $4 million. There's still costs that's included in the budget that you likely won't need all of, but at this point, property acquisition, you have the property, the final number's not set. We're carrying about $1 million in that number. It's not gonna cost $1 million, but for Penvest purposes right now, we're gonna ask for the whole amount for you. So, I'm gonna turn it over to Larry. He'll run through all those things.
Okay.
He handed you all out a package. He'll walk through them one at a time, and then, at the end, we'll give you a recommendation on what we think you need to do.
Go ahead.
5 million, you say, do you think it was because of things that you, I don't know, either were downsized or took out, or is just the bidders just maybe had to do a little better, or it wasn't rewarded?
Combination of both. It was competition A, B. There's a couple things after we bid it. We went back and said, okay, why is this so much higher? And certain things were very, very expensive. And a couple of them got eliminated. The foundation system and the excavation along the tracks became very expensive. So we went back to the geotech and said, okay, can we use ram aggregate piers? Because we've had a couple jobs that we've changed to those, and it became a cost-effective method. It wasn't in the original geotech. We asked them to look at it. It does work in these soils, so that became the chosen alternative. So
And that doesn't affect the quality of the plant itself.
no. All the limits, size, all that stayed the same. So
I know we'll talk about he had, he spec things in there that, probably better as opposed to the mediocre quality plant. So apparently you didn't take those kind of things out.
no,
Well, we did take out the,
we took
Grit-
we took out the grit removal.
yeah,
Yes.
we took out a grit remover.
Yeah. It was a luxury item. You don't have them at the other plants, and it's nice if you have it, but it's not a necessity to meet permits, so. Okay, Larry?
All right, going to the handout that's in front of you. The first handout's a table. There's two tables on the first page. The upper table, that's what was in the 2021 application that was approved by Penvest. So you can see the project budget, $17,676,149. Local shared, $3.8 million, so that includes the township, the authority, the tap fees, the LSA grant, that's also in there. And then the Penvest application, the loan that was awarded was the $13,876,149. In the Penvest loan, there was 10% contingency, so that $1 million, if you go up two line items from the bottom, $1,365,948. Construction, $11,348,201. You go to the lower table, this is where we're at with the bid. So all the line items remain the same except for two, construction and contingency, the two I went over. So when you look at the project budget, the increase is the $21,451,467, that's the $4 million. Local share, one thing I did add in here, so totals, it's $3.8 million, but the authority, you've already spent $370,256, engineering and other fees you've spent to date. So that's costs you already incurred, paid for. So when you're looking at your capital reserve impact of the project,
What was that figure again, Larry?
what's that?
What was the figure again that you?
It's $370,256. So the remaining for the local amounts, $3,429,744. For Penvest, the increased loan request would be to $18,021,723, or a increase of $4,145,574. Okay. So going to the impact of the budget, if you flip to the next page, this is the 5-year budget. What I did was, it used to go 2021 to 2025, so I hid 2021, and I added a column for 2026. Leaving the fee schedule the same, except adding an increase for 2026 for the increase. You can see the impact there, so. And the service charges, the increase of the $4 each year, with the usage charges remaining the same, residential and commercial. And I'm in the middle of the page, I apologize. At the top, let me start at the top. The budget expense categories, so the operating expenses, treatment fees include the Canonsburg, Houston increases that were projected last year, or 2 years ago, I believe. The online payment fee, I just caught that now, that needs zeroed out, because I think that's now out of the budget. Yeah, I need to remove that. But that's $36,000, that's a little impact there. Miller's Run debt service, you can see that's with your refinance from last year, so that reflects the current refinance, so adding 2026, $574,412 on your budget. And then the Penvest debt service, with that increase, I believe it was 775,000 was in the original, now we're 1,055,000 was what the debt service would be on that revised loan amount. Okay. Going down to the revenues, so you can see 2026, the increased service charge of $34 per month, usage is remaining the same. The Millers Run debt service remaining the same. Then you can see by service area, this is based on the average water usage from several years ago, how much the residents were using, what their resultant bill would be. So remember, this includes Lawrence, this includes Canonsburg, Houston service areas, your other treatment plant service areas, Millers Run. But you can see by service area what the average bill is, would be at the end of the project. And then the bottom line, the annual net, the revenue over expenses, you can see in 2025, that's when you'll pay your first Penvest annual debt service. So you can see in 2024, you have a cash reserve you're building. 2025, then you're at a reduction when that debt service kicks in, and then 2026, this gives you more or less a net balance zero for that annual budget.
May I ask, is it normal to remove the contingency?
Well, after we receive bids, like to have some contingency, but you do have your authority reserve, so the contingency would be your authority reserve if you need it during construction. We do have bids in hand that we're awarding. I guess we would have to discuss change orders as they came up during construction.
Yeah, it's not a tight budget as far as that goes.
Okay.
There is some flexibility in it. Would we like to see there be another million sitting there? Sure, but I think on this type of project, with the way the budget's been done, it would be fine. It'd be nice to have 500,000 sitting there, but I think we have that in that land number. We're sitting there with $1 million and some for land, and we're not going to spend that. So that's why I don't really want to change the budget and hedge it down at this point. So we want to ask them for the whole amount, and by the time we go to closing, we'll have those numbers. We can decide then what we want the final loan to be. So.
Okay.
Any questions on the budget?
I don't have a question, but at our December meeting, then we're going to have a motion for a rate increase for the 2023 year, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, yep.
$4 increase
Yeah, we,
in the service charge.
yep, we 23, 24, 25, 26. Yep.
Yeah, but, yeah, I'm taking it 1 year at a time.
Yep.
All right. When would construction actually start?
On the line work, I mean, it'll be over the winter. If we award contracts the first week in November, pre-construction meeting would be by early December. If I had to guess, they don't start till after the first of the year unless Cardinone needs to start, if he needs to start a project. But I would think by the time he gets structures made, all that, we're in January, so your first real bills are gonna come in February from the line work. You'll have a few small things come in for the plant, but nothing big, because the plant's gonna take almost a year to make.
So we will have Penvest approval and everything, and so I'm not familiar with how do they reimburse us? I assume that's what they do.
Yeah, you'll get your bills in.
Right.
And then we submit a request in the Penvest, and then they'll pay as you go through the contract, so.
Is there an inspection process throughout that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and
There's a audit midway through the contract, and then there'd be a final closeout inspection with DEP.
and if you miss something by a penny, they send it back for the request, so they're very, very onerous on their paperwork, but,
As far as inspection, you're providing inspection on a
Yes.
daily basis?
yes, for the line work and for the,
Plant.
Yep. So,
The next handout with the Penvest logo at the top, this is the letter of no prejudice that would be submitted, pre-closing material acquisition request. So we did discuss with Penvest, this has all happened since Friday, since the bid opening. they advised that they're approving these now for material acquisition. One thing discussing with bidders that saved money was, when we typically do municipal contracts, we'll advertise that we have 90 days to award a contract. Right now, with material cost escalations, they would have built that into their bid, so we did discuss 14 days or 28 days in the that is in the contract for award, to save those costs and to save that money. And the letter no prejudice, Penn Best said it's very regular now that they're approving letters of no prejudice for material acquisition, just because of how much the costs are changing daily. So this is the letter no prejudice that we submitted online, that we prepared. If you go to the second page of that request, well, I guess the first page, we put in some tentative schedules. We did put an estimated construction start date, December 15th. That would be accelerated. If you go to the second page, on the right side, at the top, explain why this project must proceed with construction, require materials prior to Penvest board approval, or prior to completing settlement. And in there, we explain the cost coming in over budget, and also the difficulties with materials and equipment currently. At the bottom, please include additional information you feel Penvest needs in order to review your request. You're requesting the approval of this request to allow the authority to proceed with award and execution of the contract, such as the contractor may begin acquisition of equipment materials at current pricing and lead times and minimize impacts to project schedule and budget. And also, the authority will be pursuing an increase in project funding under separate cover for consideration at the January 2023 Penvest board meeting. So this would get filed online. We did send a draft of this to Penvest, to the local specialist, for him to review before we submit it online, and they're going to do an expedited review, which usually takes about 2 weeks.
Usually takes how long?
2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks?
2 weeks?
Yeah, yeah. Yep.
So we need a motion to
Submit the letter of no prejudice.
submit the letter of no prejudice. Somebody want to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
I had one question. The anticipated application submittal date at the top, was this previously submitted that it's a 2021 date?
That's the date when our initial application went in, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I just wanted to make sure. I'm
Yeah, that's
sorry,
our, yeah,
Darlene.
that's our initial application date, yep.
Okay. Darlene made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Januso,
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers,
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes,
Aye.
Mrs. Barney,
Aye.
Mr. Roach.
Okay, the next handout's a resolution. So part of the letter of no prejudice, Penvest asked for proof that you have interim financing to cover costs until the loan is closed on. So in here, what we did was, I did a high-end projection of what the cost could be, assuming a March 2023 closing. $2 million if we incurred those costs up to that date. I think that's high-end. Looking at I put up to $5 million, looking at the authority budget, if that funding's there, like saved. That was in the audit.
Audit, yeah.
Yeah.
They want a copy of your audit too, so with this stuff, we're gonna send in a copy of your audit and then latest bank statement, basically saying, here's how much money the authority has, because they want to make sure you're not sitting at $2, that you have actually money in the bank. So that-
$1.50.
So, yeah, we'll give them proof that you can pay a few bills if you get them in, so.
And I did send this to Penvest as a draft to see if they'd be willing.
So this is just assuring them that we have adequate financing to,
Get started.
for the project until we
Close
get
on the loan.
their funds and so forth.
Yeah, we'll, Larry and I didn't talk about this, but we'll hold our bills. We'll send them to you every month, but until you get Penvest closed, you don't have to pay us on the construction inspection. We'll just hold that until you get there, because this happens all the time. As far as clients, they have to wait to close, but yet they got to start. So we can do that for you. So it's kind of part
Thank
of the
you.
process. So and we'll just accrue it and when you get your first Penvest, we'll draw it down then, so,
Okay, very good, thank you.
yep.
So this one, it would be conditional approval, depending on Penvest review for this resolution.
Okay, we need a motion for conditional approval of the resolution to Penvest regarding our financing of our ability to finance a project on an interim basis.
I'll make that in motion.
I'll second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Januso?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Barney?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
Okay, next item is the letter request to Penvest requesting the increase in the loan amount.
Okay. We need a motion for this as well? Yeah. Okay. We have a motion to authorize sending a letter to Penvest requesting the additional funding for the Lawrence project.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Januso?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Barney?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
That's all we have.
That's it.
That's it.
Any questions?
Question, what effect will it or did it have on a tap fee for the residents in Lawrence?
No change to tap fee.
No change.
Yeah, no change.
Question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any further questions on Lawrence from anyone? If not, what do we have to do relative to the bids now, the next couple items on the, we can't take any action on these, correct?
No action the week of November 1st. We should have everything back from Penvest, so if we can just pick when you want the meeting to be that week, and then we'll have everything set up for that night. So before we all leave, if we can just gather our schedules and know what night we can meet here as the first question, and then we can get it advertised and do what we have to do there, so.
Jack, do you know what the schedule is for the room?
I have it right out here, I can.
Okay.
I'm in Dallas that week. I'm in Dallas that week.
Well, you can
First,
do,
second, third.
can you do a remote?
I can do remote.
Well, it's that week, so we could do it after the 3rd as well.
That'll be Friday. But I can do remote.
Okay.
Good.
We'll figure it out after the meeting. Okay, that takes care of that. Okay, the next item then is motion to authorize McConnell Trails Phase 3A bond reduction number 5.
Everything's been approved. Everything looks good. Kevin, everything was good with
Yes.
that bond reduction 5? You guys
Yeah.
sent the letter over, everything was
Yep.
approved? No question there?
Nope.
Therefore recommend for approval.
We recommend reduction, yes.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second the motion.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Januso?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Barney?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
Okay, motion to ratify signing of the pre-developer agreement with McConnell Trails Phase 3B.
They've submitted, in the process, they submitted for the Phase 3B. They sent us over the $5,000 pre-development escrow so we could start the review of everything in engineering, so there's no reason that we can't sign this agreement.
Okay.
This is the first phase to get started on that, so I recommend that we sign that.
Somebody make a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Januso?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Barney?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
Okay, a motion authorize signing of sewer acceptance resolution 2022-6 for TOA Phase 3.
We have finally gotten everything that has been required from TOA for this phase. We started this back in July. Everything has been completed. They have paid everything in full. We've received everything that is necessary, so we recommend that we accept these source.
Okay. Motion?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Januso?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Barney?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
Okay, motion for conditional acceptance of sanitary sewers from Traditions of America Phase 4 between manholes 3-8, manhole 4-9, and manhole 4-3, and manhole 4-10.
Basically, this is just the preconditional to start the paperwork on it. We got a letter this evening from LSSE that the first portion of this from 3-8 to 4-9, everything is acceptable, and we can start the paperwork on that. There are still some issues from 4-3 to 4-10. There are some punch list items left on 4-10. So this is just for conditional acceptance that we can start the checklist, getting the paperwork together for it.
Upon your acceptance of the completion of that work.
Yes, that we send them a construction punch list. There's a list of items, and I'm working on trying to streamline that because they seem to want to send everything out of order to try to get it accepted sooner than what it should be. So we're going to try to work to get some sort of standard in place. This way we don't have this going on back and forth because it's a lot of time wasted between the engineers, myself, instead of them just going ahead and following the punch list and the checklist to send it to us by certain dates. We just chase our tails. So, but I do recommend conditional acceptance so we can get started on this process.
Is there a motion for conditional acceptance?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Januso?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Barney?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
Okay. Motion to apply for an LSA grant for the Lawrence Phase 2 grinder pump low pressure sewer project. Any comments on that?
This is the same grant you applied for last year, so it's worth applying again through LSA. Try to get a portion of that funded for the area below the tunnel. So it's just reapplying for what you did last year. They're due at the end of the month. Takes a resolution from this board as well as the township.
Okay. Roll call vote, please. Motion, please.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second the motion.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Januso?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Mrs. Barney?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
Okay, the solicitor's report.
Okay, a number of my matters have been covered, but what's left, I circulated for everyone's information, and I believe in the packets, is a status memo on where the litigation involving McCullough stands. As you know, there's a defense counsel engaged through the insurance company, and I've given everybody the update emails list as we do each month. We discussed some time back that all the McCullough matters have been discussed in public, nothing in executive session. And we continue to be transparent in that regard, given her multiple communications. I didn't want to be in a situation at some point where there was a statement by her that we were doing anything behind closed doors. Everything's been at public meeting. Secondly, on the Lawrence matter for the two larger items under land acquisition, you may recall that all of the rights-of-ways have been secured. What's left is the plant site and the ingress and egress to the plant. It's been budgeted, and we're working with both attorneys representing the one for the ingress and egress, the other for the plant site. That started with negotiations with Mr. Barnes, myself, and Walter. They're continuing. It's nuanced, but I would hope that by now we could have resolved matters. I think everybody on the board knows that there have been some issues attendant to the attorney representing the plant site. We think we're past that now, and hopefully by year's end, we'll have some movement on it. Also, with the CHJA litigation, that's still in the procedural stage. That's the newest of the litigation. There's been another motion filed by Canonsburg, and that's still hasn't been resolved. Also, the expert witness for the financial aspect of that case, Attorney Rhodes, who's already been engaged, a year or so ago, is now at a point where he can offer a more condensed opinion, at least an oral one, and all 5 municipal entities, North Strabane Township, Cecil Township, Chartiers Township, Cecil Authority, and North Strabane Authority have all agreed to share in the cost, approximately $7,000, $7,500. It's been circulated, and I think part of the billing that's already been going out. So no further motion required in that regard. And that's all I have.
Okay. Business manager's report.
Okay, the financial reports, on the income statement compared to the budget, it was brought to our attention that the current month actual is not correct. The system actually is pulling in, instead of just the current month, it's pulling in from January 1st to the current month. So we don't know if that's something, how the budget was put into the system. It's something that we're working on to correct.
Okay.
Is there any questions?
No?
No?
I picked that up, so.
Yep.
All right. Okay, the lien collections.
Okay, liens, the letters that we sent out for the 10,000 and over, the liens that were 10,000 and over, we had 3 people that did not respond, 2 that were paid in full, 2 are set up on payment plans, and 2 have a promise to pay by a certain date in December. The tap-in liens, there are 14 on payment plans, 14 that are paid in full, and, I'm sorry, 14 with no payment plans, 14 paid in full, and 15 that are on payment plans. And then the unpaid sewage liens, 36 liens have been paid in full, 31 are set up on payment plans, and 28, there's no payment plan. Questions?
Those 26 that are not on payment plans, do you have any kind of aging against that? Can you provide that going forward, like they're 60 days in arrears, 90, 120?
I can get that, yeah, I'll do that, yeah.
Any questions on the outstanding liens? Okay. The rebate from Highmark Insurance for employee premiums.
Okay, we received a refund from Highmark due to the authority not spending at least 80% of our premiums in 2021. The authority receives 95% of this refund, and the employee's refund is based off of their premium. And then in your packet, I did a breakdown of what each employee would receive.
So everybody has that in their packet? Highmark rebate? Okay, we need a motion to authorize that that the checks to the employees be sent out and approved.
Are these the checks that are listed here? Oh,
Yeah,
the
there's
1335.
the employee or previous employees' names and the amounts.
Is that total, or is that,
That's the total amount of the check, yes.
Okay, and then the authority gets $1,335?
Yes, the authority gets 1,300. And yeah, the rest are right there. I mean, it's only $6 to $16. It's small amounts of money.
Right, that's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
I mean, it's small amounts of money, and the 1,335, so that goes to the authority itself.
That's correct. So can we have a motion to approve the rebate to the employees as shown on the memo?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Januso?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Barney?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
Okay, the quotes for record destruction.
Okay, we have several boxes in storage that have records that need destroyed, and I provided 3 quotes that were in your packet, so.
Mr. Giannusso, on those quotes, I had a chance to talk with Michael a little bit before we got started here. Depending on what direction the board might go, there's some language issues for limitation of liability and such on one of them that I noted. Michael, I'm not sure if the board's just looking at this from a general standpoint this evening, not to vote.
Right, this is just an informational, that we do have a lot of records in storage that are past the destruction date according to the Pennsylvania Records Act. And we are having a lot of storage. I mean, the shelves down there when Shannon went down, they're filled, they're top to bottom. So these are things that are now 8, 10 years old that we do not need to keep. Certain things, you keep for 3 years, some things you keep for a year, some things are 7 years, some things are permanent. So even before we could go ahead and do any type of destruction, it would have to be presented to the board, a list of what would be destroyed, and we would authorize destruction of it. But we wanted to get the ball rolling and get some quotes, for either to go ahead and do it or budgetary numbers, to have an idea to work this in, because we are going to need to address this at some point.
I concur, it's a good idea. Michael and I will talk, we'll just make sure that whatever, agreement might be later deemed acceptable by the board, that it doesn't contain any onerous language, that's all. Just to give you an example, for instance, there's a limitation of liability language in one of the agreements. There's also a jurisdictional issue where it says any dispute would be resolved under the laws of a different state. There's another piece there that says that the indemnification is only for gross negligence or willful conduct, as opposed to them taking action that might be deemed negligent, as opposed to willful or grossly negligent, if for some reason they didn't follow through the way they should. Those are just items I quickly caught. I talked to Michael, and as I say, I think it's a great idea. I just want to make sure that whatever agreement might ultimately be entered into doesn't have any of the onerous language. That's all.
Well, I assume you're doing this on low price?
Well, it's going to be, if the low price does not give us the language that's acceptable that protects the authority, then you can't go with the low price. Like I said, again, we're going to have to look at that to make sure that all the language in the contract is acceptable to us. But like I said, again, it's just one of those things where it's going to need to be done at some point in time.
So you're going to come back at the
Yes.
next meeting or whatever and make a recommendation based on the contract and the price?
Yes.
Okay. All right, the next item is a motion to authorize renewal of CD. Shanna, you want to do that?
Okay,
Is your microphone on?
yeah. It's hard, it's like an awkward.
To get you an extension.
I know. Okay, renewal of CD 00-130-19917 and CD number 00-1301-7918 with Slovenian. New interest rate is 2.44% with a yield of 2.5. Currently, the interest rate is 1.95% with a yield of 2%. So I recommend renewing.
I'll make that motion, or do you have to?
I have one question. What's the amounts for those?
The new interest is 2.44%.
No, I mean the amounts of the CDs.
I didn't bring that with me. I can get that for you first thing in the morning.
All
Let you
right.
know.
On the balance sheet.
Somebody want to approve?
Wait a minute, I can,
Should be on the balance sheet. Here it is.
the one ending in 9917 is 89,441.88, and the one ending in 7918 is $1,353,266.67.
Okay.
And neither of those are amounts we need for this interim period.
It doesn't matter. They allow us to take it out.
It
with-
won't be a
Without a
prepayment
penalty.
penalty.
Without
Without
penalty.
penalty.
Yeah, they always do that with us.
Okay. And did you make?
No, nobody
make
made
the
a motion
motion.
yet, or did they?
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Second,
I'll second it.
roll call vote, please.
Mr. Januso,
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers,
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes,
Aye.
Mrs. Barney,
Aye.
Mr. Roach.
Aye.
Okay, the authority manager report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a few items just to keep everyone informed on. We had to replace a blower, number 2 motor at Teodori. We had looked at having it repaired, but it was not cost-effective to have it done. The repair was double the cost of a new motor, so we replaced that. And we also were having a problem with motor starters for the blowers over at Teodori burning up. And it was determined when we wired this new blower in that it was actually an alternating relay that was what was causing the starters to go bad, because it was calling for both blowers to come on at the same time when it was in automatic mode, and it shouldn't have been. So that's why we were continuing, it was arcing and it was frying, so the starters, so we were able to resolve that issue. So happy to say it's been over a month and we have not had any issues with it. So that's one issue that is out of the way that we can ongoing. One of the things that was included in the capital improvement budget for 2022 was $25,000 for door replacement. These are the doors on the grid handling building. There is a hydrogen sulfide issue at that place. The frames and the steel doors were rotted out. I have contacted several vendors, but so far we've only had one come out and give us an estimate. That was Acme Door and Hardware. They provided an estimate for fiberglass doors, which it would be good for that environment. I'm going to try to get a couple more estimates to show that we did our due diligence for the November meeting. If we do not get anything with the long lead times and everything else, I'll have a recommendation at that meeting. It's just been very hard to get people to come out, and just nobody wants to come out. It's tough. Item number 4, I recommend that at some point in time, we purchase some equipment for the laboratory. This would help the plant operators in performing process control at the treatment plant. This equipment will make sure that the plant's running at peak efficiency, and it'll also help to tweak operating costs. Some of the items that I'm recommending are an analytical balance, which is a scale, a desiccator, filter funnel, filter flask and tubing, a drying oven, a vacuum pump, and a pH meter for the bench top. Again, this will enable them to do some process control in-house and start to tweak a lot of things there that we spend money on, and maybe save some cost on sludge hauling and sludge pressing. So it's definitely something worthwhile. I'm working with a couple vendors to get our best possible pricing for this equipment. So I'll have a recommendation at the November meeting. Number 5, I recommend that at some point in time, the authority do a complete evaluation of the treatment plants, the pump station, and the collection system to identify any areas of immediate needs and develop an inventory of all assets that we have. Some, like you said, Teodori's not going to be as critical because it will be coming offline, but you do have Cherry Brook and Miller's Run. Cherry Brook getting on up to 40 years of age. Miller's Run, was built in 2008, so it's 15 years. So you're going to see equipment starting to get towards its life. So I think this is a good thing because it will enable us to develop an asset management plan, and then we'll be able to determine a long-term capital improvement budget, so we can plan for these items, so we're not doing reactive maintenance and replacement. We can actually plan and do predictive and preventative maintenance and replacement. And at the end of the day, the collection system as well, because there are some older sections that we've acquired that, may need attention, so we want to, include the collection system as well. At the end of the day, this is going to be a collaborative effort between the authority, manager, the engineer, the board, and I'll try to put an outline together of, what I'm thinking about for the November meeting, but it's just something I think is worthwhile because,
Consider the capital budget items for next year's budget.
but then it also gives you that planning, so you can plan 5, 10, 15 years out, so you have an idea of what you need to do and what you need to replace.
Excuse me for one moment, Dawn and Michael. One thing you may want to think, what's been carried on the solicitor's report for some time, I think we did talk briefly about it, are your existing rules and regulations that haven't been looked at for quite some time. And I think that that's something that you may want to integrate into that process.
That's actually part of it as well, looking at, it's basically going through this and coming up with an outline, because it will include policies, procedures, safety manual, different things like that. I know that that's been on your report. I started to develop one of those, so I have the groundwork for one of those, that we can, move forward with, and tweak to our needs. But like I said, again, it's just putting everything in order and coming up with a plan, but it's going to take everybody to make it successful, so. I know we applied for an LSA grant to replace 2 authority vehicles. I would recommend that we do maybe budget for one, because as soon as possible, the gray, I think it's a 2008 F-250, it is in extremely poor shape, and we really are going to need to look at replacing that at some point in time. It's in bad shape. And then when we do it, if we do replace it, I would think about a service truck that would be good for the guys when they go out and do dye testing, with a crane and the utility body they can keep their equipment in. We can look at that, get some pricing for that. I think long-term, it would be beneficial. Some of the stuff they do, lifting the manhole lids and some of the other stuff, by having that crane on the back of the truck, if you save one workman's comp injury, it's well worth the price of, what the truck was. So it's just something to consider. Like I said, again, we are going to need to replace one of the vehicles, and that, like I said, that's part of the long-term plan. How long do we keep them? Do we keep them, 5 years, 10 years? So we're not having to replace 2 and 3 at once. We can actually go ahead, and maybe every 5 years or replace them out. This way we can plan for it. And then the last item, I would like to have a brief executive session to discuss some personnel matters. Do that at the board's convenience.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments on the correspondence? Okay. Can we have a motion to approve payment of expenses and transfer of funds?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Januso?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Barney?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
Okay. Any comments or questions on the floor?
Yes, if you'd like, I'd like to bring you up to date on the Cool Valley project, at least from the township end. We were put under a lot of pressure to approve their illustrative site plan. and I know you've had a little bit of involvement with them on that project, but the illustrative site plan has to come first, and I know you know what those are. But they were very ill-prepared or unprepared for the meeting. So they asked for another date as quickly as possible. They would get, give more information and be able to answer the questions that we had. We set a date for them. That date came, and then they asked to postpone it again because they still weren't ready. And then they asked another one. We had another one then set afterwards, and they asked to delay that one too. So we can't figure out what's going on with them. They're just really came unprepared. So we're nowhere yet even on the illustrative site plan. So we have to have the final hearing on that. And then, but their intent is to do the whole development. I mean, all the infrastructure, water, sewer, gas, utilities, streets, everything on that whole site up there, the site between Grudovich Road and Lewicki Road.
How many acres is that, Tom?
And actually, for 248 or something? Actually, from the...
So it's about half of what they own, right? Because don't they own 500 and some acres?
No, they own more than that on the other side. No, that's everything on that side of, on the west side of Morganza Road.
Okay.
Really from Maple Ridge all the way up to Grudovich Road.
Okay.
And they did move that tower, as you've probably seen. It was in the middle of that parcel. They had it moved. And so, but they're going to do the whole thing before they even ask for any, the abilities to sell things. It's kind of unusual, developer putting the whole thing in from start to finish.
We haven't heard anything from them formally or informally, have we?
We have heard from them. They had called a request to say that it was back on. They sent just some drawings and some numbers over as far as what their flows were. But the flows, they weren't what we were looking for, so we requested some more information on some historical flows based on other developments that they have done. And there were a couple other questions that were in there. We have not heard anything back other than they sent us over some site plans. Other than that, we have not heard anything since July.
What's their plans for treatment of the sewage?
Well, one of the things is the question is if it's going into the Maple Ridge pump station, that pump station is definitely going to need some upgrades to it to handle the flows. So the question's going to be is who's paying for the upgrades as far as that goes, and some of the numbers that were there just didn't seem to be.
So it's going to go to the Chartiers Houston plant?
So basically, like you said, we're waiting to see, the next step.
Houston,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
so I have not heard anything more from them, but that's basically all that they really said to us, that it's back on, that it was going, kind of just really, as he put it, like the 30,000-foot view of what they planned to do, what it was going to be, a mix of, different things in there. So that's what
They were pushing us because they planned on breaking ground in the spring. And actually, they have almost all the off-site traffic improvements approved from PennDOT, for West McMurray Road, Grudovich Road, or where South Point Boulevard meets Morganza. So they have, that's all factored in, and they said they're ready to do it all at once. But like I said, we've had some holdups on their part for just an illustrative site plan.
I mean, we don't have any formal submission of anything, so
No, like I said, again, it's just been.
they got a long way to go
I have
for
a
us,
folder that's probably about this thick on what they've been going back and forth on this over 10 years.
Right.
But there's been nothing formal. Like I said, they actually did send us full-size plans with some of the revisions, to what they're going to put here. Like you said, the traffic issues, how they were on to address that stuff. But as far as the flows go, as far as the, for sure for the sewage, they really haven't given us any more information.
Well, how do you recall, whenever you were working with TOA, then Ron Sabatino came in and started arguing that he should have a portion of that. Was there anything left after TOA was given the go-ahead?
Boy, off the top of my head. I believe there's something left, but it's not a lot.
Because they originally talked about putting their own plant down on Hahn Road, on the low part. And the agreement, I think, that you guys had with them was that they would have to make capacity for the village of Hendersonville. They didn't have to sewer it, but the plant was going to be built. And that was your initial discussions whenever they bought that 900 acres. whenever they, were, started that TIF process and things like that.
All
So-
of that was very informal, though, and at that time, their plans were like really pie in the sky.
But it wasn't informal, they actually had their hearings for the TIF project that they planned on doing. They weren't going through LERTA, they were going through TIF, which is a different type of funding. And, but they had the hearings, met with the owners, and they started the process that they're required to do through the Washington County Authority or Redevelopment, I can't remember which one. Bill Sember, so whoever, if he's with
That's
the
the Washington County Authority.
authority, okay, then they were working with them.
Yeah.
And, like I said, I don't know where it's at now. We're waiting just for the illustrative site plan to be rescheduled.
As far as like any official thing from them, we have no knowledge officially, right?
Oh,
Everything's been informal.
For the last 10 years or better.
Oh, longer than that.
I know.
I think for as long as I've been on this board, I've heard of Sabatina.
But see, we do want to work with them, and we need that kind of development. A lot of it is commercial. One whole pad is for medical facilities and things like that. They said they have an agreement for, and they couldn't disclose who it was, but for a medical facility, for actually a hospital on the one pad number E, I think. But and that's why they were so hell bent on getting started this spring to break ground so they can meet obligations. So I'm surprised they're so kind of far behind with you guys.
They're really far behind the 8 ball with us.
what I'll do, Mr. Janoso, is I will pull up what I have on the project to see where we're at, what they've requested, what some of the projected flows were. I'm not sure, like I said, again, it was just an informal, and that's kind of what he told me, just kind of a 30,000-foot view of what's going on with the project, that they're considering it again. But I can find out, what they've officially asked for and
I
inform
mean,
the
if
board.
their flows are going to CHJA, we have to make sure with them that they can handle all of that.
Right, and I'm not even sure, Kevin, I don't know if you've ever remember seeing a planning module or anything for it, so before they could do anything, you'd have to submit a planning module to see if we can even take the flows and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of things that are involved in that, and like I said, I will pull this out and take a look and see. 'Cause
If you have a contact, it would probably be worth at least contacting them, only just to come to get them on record that, hey, there's another whole component that they're nowhere along. And the other thing is, I was saying that we are kind of desperate for that kind of development because, South Point, the last building has been built, whatever our tax base is right now, it's not going to change unless we get, more of commercial and that they're the type of business they're planning on bringing in. So we're kind of really dependent on that for our finances.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
Mr. Chairman, I have the calendar for schedule that meeting.
Oh,
I have first week of November, Tuesday through Thursday open. Second week of November, the 8th through the 10th open.
what's our time frame as far as having to have it done by?
The latest it could be. Latest it could be is the 11th for the line work contract of November, but we would like to have it the first week in November if we could. So the 3rd?
Now, what works with you, Aaron?
I'm
Is it the
out
first?
the first, second, and third. I can take phone calls in the evening on the first and second, but I'll be in flight on the third, and I'm available the full next week, 7th through the 11th.
What about the 1st or the 2nd? What's everybody's schedule?
Yeah.
I'm good the first.
You said it's open, is that correct?
Correct.
Evening, right?
Yeah,
First is good.
I won't be here, I'll be remote.
First and second are okay with me.
First and second are okay with me.
What was the date?
First or
First or second
second?
in November.
It's a Tuesday or Wednesday.
As of stand right now, I'm okay.
Good on my end, too.
Either day, we're good.
Pick a day, Tuesday.
Want to keep it on Tuesday?
Keep it Tuesday.
Keep it Tuesday. Tuesday at 6:30.
Perfect.
Is that okay?
November 1st at 6:30.
Right.
Jack, can we get a Zoom link or okay.
I'll be happy to send that out. I can send it out early with a reminder or, whatever you choose.
Just a quick question. You'll be away and calling in?
Yes.
For that? I just wondered, would
Yes.
any chance, would 6 o'clock work for anyone for that time? Is that a problem as opposed to 6:30?
6 works for me.
Is that okay?
Latest, I have meetings till 3:30. I'm good
Okay.
after then.
Okay, thank you.
6 is okay? Greg?
I'm good.
Dudley?
Yeah.
6 is okay. We can make it at 6 then.
Okay, thank you.
Is that okay with you, Jack?
Yes.
And that'll be advertised, I guess as such.
I'm going to be needing Zoom links too.
Okay, I'll send it to everybody for just that meeting.
Pardon me?
Is that what you meant, Zoom links for?
For the meetings.
Yeah, just
For
in
next,
case.
for the special meeting and for the foreseeable.
Okay.
I had two other just small items I forgot to mention. There's 2 grants that are out. One PA Water and Sewer Grant, one H2O grant. They're due in mid-December. So for the November meeting, I'll discuss with Mike, see if there's any projects that fit those 2. And then it's something you may want to consider at the November meeting. So we put the amounts in our memo on page 3 that they're eligible for. But if you want to look at that and if there's anything comes to mind, and we'll talk to Mike here during the budgeting process to see if there's something that can be funded out of one of those grants. So, thank you.
Would page you say?
It's on page 3 at the bottom of our memo. It's an H2O grant and a PA small water grant, so
We can't get any more money for Lawrence, huh?
probably not. So maybe phase 2, but, so, nothing on phase 1. Yeah, it could. Yeah,
I mean, that would help us cut down on those rate increases.
yeah.
That would still be good.
Yeah, it becomes our contingency that we no longer
Yeah.
have.
So, okay.
All right. So we need a motion for executive session to discuss personnel matter.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Januso?
See you, man. Thank you.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Mrs. Barney?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
Jack, this is still being recorded, right? So we have to, okay, we have to adjourn to the,
Are we gonna go in there or are we
Yeah,
gonna sit here?
because this is being
Because
recorded.
it's being
so
recorded.
If not, it's no sense having
No,
an executive
no.
session.
I know that, but I'm saying, did you ask him if he's gonna shut it off?
Can you pause it?
That's what I mean.
That's what I
He
asked.
can pause it right now.
Can you pause it with their coats on? Have a writer's cramp.
I do, it's in my bag.
See, I